Hi, everyone. It's so nice to have you here for this ACL special webinar. It's the second in a series that we've done to highlight the Brown's Affinity Groups. I'm Joan Winter-Scarrett, and I'm Communications Chair for the class of 1984, and I'm co-chair of the ACL's Training Committee. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. The webinar is being audio and video recorded. Please make sure your microphone is muted. Rename yourself with your class year at the end of your name. And if you would please put questions in the chat or raise your hand. There's a couple of us that are going to be paying attention and try to help this feel more interactive so that you can ask questions as they come up and interact with the wonderful, amazing presenters that are going to be here today. So with that, next slide. I am very happy to introduce our moderator for tonight, Krista Bradley, who is co-president of the class of 1986, and she is an ACL board member serving on the training committee. Krista, take it away.
Thanks, Joan. Hi, everybody. It's good to see you. Thanks for the introduction and for all your efforts, Joan and Terry, on the training committee to help organize tonight. We're happy that you're here. They will also be checking with you all about questions and putting, if you have a question along the way, we do want to keep this interactive. So please feel free to raise your hand, put it in the chat, and we'll be ready to go. Next slide, please. So before we get started, I just want to give you a roadmap of where we're going. We have some introductory grounding that we want to share. We want to talk about why affinity groups and why they're important. Engagement and belonging are critical to our alumni experience, right? Aren't they? And as fellow class leaders, I know we all want to be successful in engaging all of our fellow classmates in our events. Affinity is a powerful facilitator for both engagement and belonging, and alumni affinity groups are one of the many ways alumni find connection and belonging among their alumni classmates. So that's the reason for tonight, and we're going to highlight a few of our affinity groups this evening and talk about the mission and purpose of BULAC, IPC, and NABA. We're going to talk about how to connect with affinity groups, and then we're going to talk about some upcoming events and the ways that you can engage your class and the ways that you can partner with our affinity groups. Next slide. So what are affinity groups? Affinity groups are ways that alumni can connect with Brown and engage with fellow Brownonians around shared identities. Brownonians share more than just their ties to Brown, and those are great. But through affinity groups, alumni can connect with one another and the university around culture, racial, ethnic, gender, sexual orientation, and disability identities that cut across generations, regions, and professions. Brown's affinity groups are open to all members of the student and alumni community. Even though we are one alumni body, we have many voices, and that diversity makes us great. Next slide. So Brown has 7 affinity groups, some of which we have highlighted last spring, but let me just go through the list so you have a sense. So there's A4, Asian American Alumni Alliance, which was featured in the spring webinar last year. Brown Alumni Pride, or BAPA, was also featured last May. Brown University Latino Alumni Council, or BULAC, is featured today. The Brown Women's Network will be featured in the future. The Disability and Neurodivergence Alumni Collective, or DNAC, was featured last spring. The Inman page, Black Alumni Council, or the IPC, will be featured today. And finally, Native American Brown Alumni, or NABA, will also be featured today. If you'd like to actually access last spring's affinity group to just get a better sense of the other groups that we're not highlighting tonight, there's a link here, and I think we'll also put that into the chat so you have it. All right, next slide. So tonight, as I mentioned, we're highlighting 3 of the 7 affinity groups. We have BULAC, and we have Ramón Stern, who will be talking about the mission and purpose of that group. From the IPC, we have Eleanor Brown talking about that group, and Silvina Hernández, who is both a member and a staff member at Brown, will be talking about NABA. And so without further ado, I want to bring on Ramón Stern, and we'll go to the next slide and turn things over. Ramón, it's great to have you. We look forward to hearing more about BULAC.
Thank you very much for the introduction. If we could move on to the next slide. The mission and purpose of BULAC is, in short, to maximize the Brown experience for Latinos and Latinx, which includes connecting Latinx alumni with each other. That can be through regional events and different types of collaborations, to the university and what's going on at the university at the moment, and also to students through different types of connecting events between students and alumni. Next slide, please.
That came up fast. Ramón, before we move on to Eleanor, I'm just curious, how old is BULAC?
I wish I had done my research on the exact year that it was founded before coming. I actually don't know the year that it started, but it was founded in 2001. Okay.
Wonderful.
Nina's
All right,
on top of
thanks.
things.
Thank you very much.
It's been over
Appreciate
20
that.
years.
Wonderful, thanks. It's great to have the sense of history, and that not all affinity groups have been were just started. They've been around for a while, so thank you for that grounding. Eleanor, it's great to have you here to talk about the Inman Page Black Alumni Council, and congratulations on being the president-elect. Let's go to the next slide and give you the opportunity to share more about IPC.
So I'm going to go ahead. Thank you so much for having me. Delighted to be here. I am a member of the class of 93. I'm also one of the leaders for my class, and president-elect for IPC, named after Inman Page, who was one of the first African Americans to attend Brown University and later became a very well-known educator who made a tremendous difference. IPC's formal start was in the year 2000, so we're in our 25th year. But even before it formally started, there was an informal network. I came to Brown in 1989 from my home country of Jamaica. And part of the reason that I felt so comfortable coming to Brown was because there was a strong network of Black alumni who were very much involved in the current community and in the future community. And we continue that today. We have a strong group of alums who communicate in tangible ways. We work very hard at it with students who are currently on campus, who help recruit students who will be coming to campus. So we're a community of alumni who look at how we can help make life, more, help current students become more involved in the Brown community, seeing them as future active alumni. We have done, a number of events over the years. Quite recently, we had, an extraordinary gathering of Black alumni come back to Brown. It was an amazing weekend. We expect that we'll be doing things for our 25th anniversary. And, I am happy to answer more questions as we go on. Delighted to be here.
Thank you, Eleanor. Just a reminder, if you do have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. There's no wrong question and no stupid question. So feel free to have at it. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, I'm happy to turn the mic over to Silvina Hernández, who's both a staff member and a member of NABA, who will talk about NABA, but also talk and help us move into the second part of our conversation, where we can learn about some of the upcoming activities for each of these organizations and the ways that we as ACL and as class leaders can utilize these amazing resources and the activities that they're doing. Silvina?
Thank you, Krista. I almost wish Eleanor had gone first, because she definitely prepared a wonderful presentation for IPC's mission and purpose. I know when I was prepping with Ramón and Eleanor, I was like, keep it short, like we can answer questions, as they come up. So we can answer questions as they come up. What I wanted to highlight about NABA is on this slide, but before that, I like Krista said, my name is Silvina. I'm an alumna from the class of 2017, but I'm a member of NABA, also a member of BULAC, and see myself as a member of all affinity groups, really, in my capacity as a staff member in the Office of Alumni Relations. So I've been in the office now for 3 years, and my work has always been to support the mission, purpose, and initiatives of our affinity groups. So I was really excited to be able to participate tonight and help Ramón and Eleanor prepare for our presentation. So again, Eleanor did a wonderful job just now. What I would say is with NABA, this is the Native American Brown Alumni group. We purposely say Native/Native American to be inclusive of Native identities beyond America, either identified as US or as the North and South American continents, since we have Native communities across the world. Ultimately, NABA seeks to center the diverse experiences of these communities and build a community of care, healing, support, and recognition. The group really has in mind both alumni, current students, but also local Native tribes and how to be in partnership and community beyond, the central kind of shared identity, which brings us together within the Brown context. So again, happy to say more. I will also, despite having worked at Brown for a few years now, can't tell you the exact date off the top of my head when NABA was founded, but happy to answer other questions. I'll go to the next slide now and get into some additional information. So I'm gonna ask Ramón and Eleanor to chime in a little bit because I don't want to be the only one talking, but I did want to share some exciting information about Brown Connect Plus. So I hope that most folks are familiar with this, but in case you don't know, in September of last year, the Office of Alumni Relations, in partnership with other campus offices, launched a platform called Brown Connect Plus. This is kind of a new website of sorts, but also very reminiscent of what Brown Connect, if you remember that from a few years ago, used to have as a purpose of just having a database of all our alumni for each of us to find each other. One of the huge improvements of Brown Connect Plus is actually having both alumni and students active in the platform. Alumni can find other alumni and students can find alumni. And once a student connects with an alum, you have established kind of a connection and a way to hold a conversation within Brown Connect Plus. Imagine this as Brown's social media platform for finding each other, talking to each other. So you'll find folks' profiles with email addresses. You can direct message each other on Brown Connect Plus, etc. And to speak more specifically, our affinity groups exist on Brown Connect Plus, along with groups for classes, groups for clubs, etc. But having the affinity groups active on Brown Connect Plus is really exciting for us because it means we can have membership directories if we want to find folks within the affinity group communities who have joined these groups, open to all, of course. It's a way to kind of have a smaller kind of subset of the all community directory, which I was just mentioning you can find on the platform as well. This is a centralized communications tool. So administrators of the various groups have a way to send emails directly through the platform to all members. So you might have seen some recent class emails or recent club emails. They're all coming through Brown Connect Plus, and so are our affinity group emails. This has just been a way for volunteers to have an easier way, right, to send communications. But many of you might know this already because you are class leaders, and some of you might actually be administrators. But this is just something really exciting that for affinity groups has been a huge benefit to having the groups exist on Brown Connect Plus. It's also a way to promote our events. But generally speaking, affinity groups are starting to see Brown Connect Plus as a place to house all the information, to house the community, and almost see it as, the group's personal website. But again, also a communication tool. So what we want to tell you all, ACL leaders, is to tell your classmates to log in and activate their Brown Connect Plus accounts. We've seen some great activation numbers in the last few months, but would like to see more. Ramón or Eleanor, do you guys have, Ramón, do you want to chime in, say a couple things about BULAC?
Yes, I'd like to say a few things about BULAC in addition to Brown Connect Plus, but I'll mention this really quickly that Brown Connect Plus is a great centralized hub where you can get all the info in one place, and it's a great place for finding different alumni through a large directory, and also RSVPing and being aware of what's going on in the alumni community. And because it's all centralized in one place, that means it's much easier to be able to access all that information at once. So that's a really fantastic thing about Brown Connect Plus. I'm class of '04, as you can see. I came to Brown in 2000, the year before BULAC was founded. Now I know or remember. And it was a really, really important part of my experience at Brown to connect with the diverse groups of Latinx folk at Brown. And it's a really, really important connecting piece of my own identity and the identity of so many people when I was at Brown. And so BULAC is a really, really important resource. Because we've had a lot of tight-knit communities across the generations and everything, it's a super, super important connector of the Latinx community on a variety of different levels. So I just wanted to say that I've been working for BULAC for about 7-8 years now. I was a regional rep in Providence first while working at Brown, and also been VP of campus engagement, and now president. And it's been an absolutely wonderful experience connecting with different alumni leaders. And I think Brown continues to advance more and more also as far as the resources available for alumni to connect with each other. And Brown Connect Plus is one of those examples of something that really facilitates those connections, and also allows students to access a lot of information as well. So I guess that's what I had to say. And I'm happy to answer questions. I think I'm better at winging answering questions than presenting, but I thought I'd add a little bit.
So Ramon, we do have a question from Bob Sherman, and he's wondering if there is a physical house or meeting place on campus for BULAC and all of the affinity groups, but maybe you can address BULAC for us.
Sure. I mean, there's different identity communities. There's Machado House, which has Spanish and Portuguese and other languages, and then there's also a variety of places. Obviously, Brown Center for Students of Color, which is our World Center, is a place where a great deal of different affinity groups meet with each other. But there isn't one location for BULAC per se, as far as I know. But Brown has a lot of different clubs and groups, and among different Latinx folk, I think a really important point is that we're a diverse bunch. There's Afro Latinx folk, there's white Latinx, there's people who are mixed Indigenous and European, there's people who identify as Indigenous, et cetera, et cetera. So within the Latinx community, there's a lot of different groups, and me myself as well, I belong to 3 different affinity groups, BAPA as well, and also DNAC. So it's really important to understand those different intersecting identities, and the Latinx community, we find a way to connect with each other, but we also have our own distinct identities from one another.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. You know, I had a meeting recently with some students, and I told them to think about it as Brown's LinkedIn. So, you know, as you are, you know, approaching graduation, thinking about opportunities, be it for further academic work, you know, as graduate students, or in the working world, and you want to reach out and find out which other Brown alums are in your interested area and whether or not they might be able to give you guidance and mentorship, I think that you would be hard pressed to find something better than Brown Connect to do it. So I think if part of the goal is to make sure that the current students are really drawing on the wealth of experience and expertise and mentorship in the larger Brown community, Brown Connect is really a very good resource for that. And that's the way that I think about it. Connecting alumni with other alumni, connecting students with alumni. And you know, I really, you know, I am a person who, you know, I get very attached to a particular software, and the previous platform that we had was one that I had been using for years. And, I was also communications chair at one point. So I was very used to that platform. So when they said they were transitioning to a new platform, I was a little bit nervous, just because I was so used to the one before. But this is really well done. So I would very much commend it to you. So when I was at Brown, we had what was called the Third World Center, which is now the Brown Center for Students of Color. I think that was mentioned. And in addition, there is Harambe House. I would like to think, and, I feel quite confident, having spent some time with students, that, there are places where, they can be their full and authentic selves, in the broader university community, and then also in these particular spaces. Also, Rights and Reason, although one doesn't really technically think of it as an affinity, there's just such extraordinary cultural content reflecting a diverse range of people coming out of Rights and Reasons, that I also think of Rights and Reason as being part of who we are as well. So thank
I
you for that
appreciate.
very good question.
Yeah, it was, because the sense of place is so important in creating belonging, right? And a place to be able to come together. So thank you for that question, Dawn. Silvina, does NABA have a place on site?
Yeah, so as Ramón was saying, these are really student-driven spaces. So obviously, students become alums. And so we see those places as our own as well, even though we're alumni. So they're not officially like alumni affinity group spaces, but they are our affinity group spaces on campus. In the case of NABA, there's, again, the Brown Center for Students of Color is certainly the primary place that we think of as an affinity space on campus for all alumni, students, faculty, staff, everyone. There's also a growing academic initiative called the Native American and Indigenous Studies Initiative. That also has a building and home on campus. It has more of a programming and academic focus, but has certainly developed also opportunities for student and alumni participation. So I'll actually mention them in an upcoming slide as well.
Wonderful. We have a couple more questions. I'm wondering if we can go ahead and ask those to be as interactive. There's a question about how do affinity groups collaborate with one another? That might be an appropriate thing now or later. Does anybody want to take that?
I can comment, and then if Ramón or Eleanor want to mention an example. I think it helps that they're all together, facilitated by a team in alumni relations. So I have a couple colleagues that also support our other affinity groups. And also that they're, like Ramón said, there's so many intersecting identities between our affinity groups. So there have been several opportunities in the past where, BAPA, the Brown Alumni Pride Association, did an event with A4, the Asian American Alumni Alliance. BULAC and IPC have been strong partners. And our office facilitates partnerships by bringing folks together. So in January, we actually had a really great gathering of affinity group leaders as part of a retreat of sorts, to kind of get folks meeting with each other, knowing each other, seeing each other as partners in this belonging endeavor that we all want to support. So there's always opportunities for joint events or joint initiatives, etc.
So I would like to say one concrete mechanism of collaboration is at graduation. My favorite ceremony at graduation is the one in which we recognize student leaders from the different affinity groups. I moderated that not last year, year before last, and it was absolutely inspiring. The sort of thing where you think to yourself, I would love my children to be here to see what is possible. And that is an event where all of the different affinity groups come together and recognize the amazing students from our different communities. So I think of that as a tangible mechanism of collaboration.
Yeah, just to add a couple of things, I think the commencement events are super important for building unity in a variety of different spaces. There's also reception in the Brown Center for Students of Color that's very well attended, and it's something that's super important to connect across communities. I also remember that there was a faculty member who passed away some years ago, Anani Jejenya, who was one of the pioneers in Afro-Latinx studies, and also taught classes and about West Africa, and was a key towering figure in Africana studies. So there's also collaborations academically across different affinity groups, and so that also means that for students on campus and also for alumni knowing what's going on campus, there's quite a lot of intersections and collaborations.
Yeah. Did we want to answer another question, or should we continue?
Yeah, there's a question from Scott. Scott, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yes, I'm Scott Summers. I'm in Los Angeles, and I'm the president of the class of '69. I know Bob Sherman, who's very involved with the ACL, is also on here. It seems to me we have a challenge. In the late '60s, I remember when I joined my fraternity, I had Black fraternity brothers, I had Asian fraternity brothers, I had Jewish fraternity brothers in an era where that was most universities. Jews had their own fraternity. And I remember thinking that this is what a great university ought to be, integrated. And I guess I'm concerned about how we combine the notion of integration, and that's we push that a lot, of course, within the class. We try to make sure that there are opportunities for all races and all interest groups. And the affinity groups, it seems to me, I mean, we now have a Black alumni reunion in the fall. If we add Native American alumni reunions and Hispanic alumni reunions, there's no one left for the regular reunion except a bunch of white people. And frankly, that greatly concerns me. So I think the question is, how do we balance this issue of really pushing integration with class events and the affinity groups, which essentially, sadly, in my mind, looks like segregation?
Scott, thank you for that question. I appreciate what you're asking. You know, we all share our Brown history, and we all had different experiences at Brown. But we are all in you know, our Brown alumni, and so it's, you know, it's natural to want to be a part of having the full community come together and to celebrate what we do share. I would offer as a person of color and an alumni and an ACL member, I have friends across all of the classes, and I also appreciate being a part of this community with the IPC. So I don't know if it's an either or, but I think it's a both and an additive, where some folks really appreciate the chance to come together with people that have shared identity and experiences that they might not feel with the entire class. And yet that's still a valid and important Brown affinity and experience. So I don't think it's an either or, but that's just something I would offer. I appreciate what you're saying a lot, and you know, we want to all be together. But that's just as a person that is a part of both groups. I would offer that as one perspective. Does anybody else want to pipe in?
I wanted to say something, if you wouldn't mind. Could I go ahead, Krista?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Please.
So I, the professor in me would love to see, some data to support what my intuition is. But when we had the Black alumni event, which the turnout was actually absolutely tremendous. We also had a very, very good turnout at the general reunions in, because that happened to be my year where I was both 30th reunion and IPC in one year. My feeling is that one of the things that is very striking about Brown in comparison to other universities is the very high degree of involvement, for example, of the Black alumni, very, very high degree of involvement. And so I see the affinity group as augmenting the likelihood of involvement in the broader university events. So I see it as being additive. And, you know, that has been my personal experience. So I appreciate your question. I thank you for raising it. I would wager, I went to grad school at another Ivy League school. My sister went to undergrad and med school at another Ivy League school. And having been exposed to 3 or 4, I think that the degree of engagement of the Black alumni in the broader university in comparison to those other 3 and 4 schools is unmatched at those other 3 or 4 schools in comparison to Brown. That's my personal belief. And so I wish I had data to back that up. And so I see the groups as increasing the enthusiasm for the whole. That's, you know, I'm not putting it as artful in my language as I should, but I hope I've conveyed my point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Eleanor. Kelly?
Yeah. Thank you. Scott, I echo Krista and Eleanor, what they said. I wanted to add and my appreciation for you asking that question. I think it's really important that we all have safe spaces where we can listen to one another and we can ask questions that may be difficult in other spaces, that we come with an understanding and an invitation to each other to be able to talk about these things. So thank you so much for asking. One other thing that I would add, in addition to what's already been said, is that I think by being here together, we're able to tap into affinity groups, even in wraparound events. So if you have a local event coming up, or you have the class that you're leading, being able to contact Eleanor, some of the other, or the NABA leader who's here, Silvina, Ramón, to be able to contact them and to have them assist with enhancing an event that you're doing by having a presence of the people of color in that class, it would be advantageous. And one other thing I'll add really quickly is a personal story. I was the first person in my family who was from our lineage of slavery, who came to Brown. My great-grandmother came to our graduation at Brown. She was 102, and she was the first person who was not enslaved in my family. So it was really important for me to join with other students who had that background and had that understanding, because it made me feel stronger and more secure. But to your point, Scott, we can take that strength and security and all combine it to synergy, so we all feel more strong and secure together, and we can also collaborate. So that's why we're all here. So thank you so much for asking the question.
I was
Appreciate
just
it.
going to add something quickly if there's time, just for a quick comment.
Please.
I think as someone who identifies as Latinx, but who also is on the white spectrum of Latinx, I have to say that I've never really felt any strong sense of segregation or rejection of me in affinity spaces. In fact, if as long as coming in with respect for specific perspectives, I think it's actually a highly welcoming space. And it's not an exclusive space, really. So that's also an important thing. I also think Brown clubs and the regional groups, they do events together a lot of the time among alumni. And I think also class years are a huge draw. And I haven't noticed people ignoring, you know, their general class year, and people from a variety of different backgrounds as well. There's a variety of different angles and ways to connect all Brunonians. And I think I don't think it's, I agree, it's not an either or. There's a lot of synergy and a lot of, but without the affinity groups, I think that could be impacted. I think it's really important to have them. I just think it's important to communicate across those different groups and just enhance the work that's being done in general across class years, etc. So.
Well, thanks. Oh, go ahead, Scott. Yeah, sure.
Respond to that, because I absolutely understand and I agree, and I've heard it from particularly Black members of our class, that they're more likely to attend something if they feel like some of the Black friends that they have in the class are likely to be there. And so it's a natural inclination. I guess I would just encourage us as a community to think about how the affinity groups work together with all other affinity groups, including white people and males, and that of course never have an affinity group. I think all of these need, the more separate we become, the more unfortunate I think the brown community becomes. So I think we need to figure out a way to get the positives of the affinity and make sure that we're integrating, affinity groups with other affinity groups and everyone in the community, which of course is ideally what we try and do as a class.
Thank
There was
you,
a really
Scott.
important comment that the affinity groups, though, they are open to others as well, to learn from them and to participate in them in some ways. So like it's important to realize that they're not exclusive spaces. If people want to learn, they can come and interact with everybody. So I just think that's really important, not to feel excluded right away, but to actually engage with them in whatever way that you can or feel comfortable, and then make those types of connections, because they're not completely closed off.
Yeah, Ramon and Harry, thank you for underscoring that, because all affinity groups are open to everyone. It just happens that maybe they're centering a particular perspective in those affinity groups, but everyone is welcome there. So we wanted an interactive conversation and we got it, which is great. So Scott, thanks for opening that up for all of us. I want to just invite Silvina to move forward with, let's talk about sort of what are the things that are coming up, and all of you to talk about what's coming up as events, what's coming up with reunion, and ways that all of us on the as class leaders can coordinate and partner with you. So Silvina, do you have some events that you want to share?
Definitely. And again, I just want to say, when the ACL leaders reached out to me about coordinating with affinity groups to be here, it was part of the intention so that class leaders learn about our affinity groups and think about ways in which you are considering these communities in your class programming. It could be directly by inviting affinity group leaders, but it could also just be knowing like, oh, okay, I understand these are all experiences and diverse perspectives that are a part of all of our classes, or can be considered in all of our classes. So when you're thinking of an event, you could look to affinity groups to see what they've done in the past and maybe, repurpose an idea for an all class event. Before I get into events though, I wanted to go to the next slide and talk about ways in which you can further support these communities, particularly our communities who are on campus. So again, when thinking about putting together this presentation, is like, what can we share with you as ACL leaders to incorporate into your programming? But in the previous event we had, there were also questions of what can ACL leaders do to support affinity groups or the initiatives of affinity groups. So these are affinity group led but community initiatives that bolster the university's effort to cultivate a diverse and inclusive body at Brown, so that we continue to have these very lively and wonderfully diverse classes every year. And so 3 of those scholarships that we wanted to highlight tonight was the Mercedes Dominich BULAC BAF Scholarship, the IPC BAF Scholarship, and for folks who don't know, BAF is the Brown Annual Fund, and the A4 Undergraduate Endowed Scholarship. So gifts to these funds provide financial aid to undergraduate students with a preference for our students from historically underrepresented groups. These scholarships are awarded after admission, so it's really just a way to bolster, the available financial aid that is awarded to students after they've been admitted. But our message to you today is, if you didn't know about these scholarships, they're here. And we've seen wonderful initiatives from all class groups. Like I believe it was a class of I'm gonna get it wrong, but class just a couple of years ago, because it was the reunion year, organized collectively, and everyone in the class was invited to donate, and it was one of the biggest ways to support the IPC BAF scholarship that year. So this is something that, again, can be done as a whole class, and is a way to showcase to all your classmates, like, we consider these communities, we know there are members of these affinity groups within your class. Here's a way that we can all learn about these opportunities to give and these things that our classmates care about. So I did want to invite Ramón to say a few things about the Mercedes Domenech BULAC BAF scholarship. And then Eleanor will say a few things about IPC. Ramón, do you want to?
Yes, thank you very much, Silvina. Before talking about the scholarship and its purpose, I just wanted to mention really quickly, I know Mercedes Domenech, and when I went to Brown and countless students, she remembered our names. She did so much work recruiting in regions that were heavily Latinx, and so she was really a trailblazing person in the College of Admissions at Brown. That was super important to those of us in that community, and in general to the university. As far as the BULAC BAF scholarship, like Silvina mentioned, it's providing support for students to feel welcome from the Latinx community that have shown some kind of financial need. And it's a really, really important giving opportunity to show support to the community of those who have been admitted and make their experience at Brown more smooth and more pleasant. So it's really, really an important opportunity, and also alumni from different years and groups of people can organize to give. And this class of 2028, there were 2 students that received scholarships through the Mercedes Domenech BAF scholarship, and it's just so important for us to continue this and continue to support it. So thank you, Silvina, for the opportunity to talk about it.
So, sorry, let me, sorry, thought I was still on mute. So one of the things that I enjoy most about when I come back to Brown, which I try to make as often as possible, is meeting the recipients of the IPC BAF scholarship. Really an extraordinary group of students. There is one student in particular that I'm thinking of who is graduating, I think in this coming year. He's interested in neurosurgery, he's interested in economics, he's interested in writing, a creative person, and really, simply extraordinary. I joke that were I trying to be getting into Brown now, I would have great difficulty. I'm not sure I would get in because these students who are currently at Brown are just so extraordinary. And so we see the IPC BAF scholarship as an additional opportunity to extend financial support to students like these who are doing extraordinary things. So really you can free them up in all of their creativity, so they don't have to be worrying too much about financial resources. And it has been really a mechanism also of galvanizing our community. There's a very strong commitment to these scholarships. Persons go out of their ways to contribute, and for example, when the days are coming up to contribute, lots of social media postings and emails and people reminding their friends, all the people who benefit from this. So I think it is wonderful for the students, for obvious reasons, the financial support and ability to explore whatever they want to explore without being as worried about finances. But I think it is also wonderful for what it does in terms of community building among alumni and between alumni and students. So I am a very, very strong supporter. And, many of us, when we contribute to the general fund, but we also take a little bit and we say, could you please contribute it specifically to the IPC? So it's something that, I personally am very proud of. And I think it's been absolutely wonderful for the students. And when you come back and you meet them, they're really, really an inspiring group of students.
Yeah. Thank you, Ramón and Eleanor. Just to say again, so these are kind of very similar to main scholarships. So we're all familiar with, if we receive financial aid, you might have seen in your package. At the time, there was a very generous family that contributed to the financial aid fund and part of your package included a NABE scholarship. So our Mercedes Ramonich BULAC BAF scholarship, the IPC BAF scholarship, and the A4 undergraduate endowed scholarship are very similar to these in that they're awarded post-admission. So it's just a way to bolster the general financial aid pool available to the university after they've finalized their admissions. And just an extra kind of way to, again, represent our communities, know that these are communities that are being considered and welcomed and celebrated on campus. But they certainly do not influence, have any influence over admissions. And so that's how, we talk about our scholarships and how we can continue to support them in the coming years. So we certainly do invite you to think about organizing your classmates to make a class gift to one of our affinity group scholarships. If we can go to the next slide. And now to get into events that we'd love for you to promote. There was some activity in the chat and I linked to the reunions website already. But to say more, I wanted to mention during reunion, along with the wonderful class programming and other programming that exists, some folks might have participated in like a Watson event or a commencement forum or other institutes across the campus will host receptions, etc. We love the fact that our affinity groups also have an opportunity to host similar gatherings during reunion weekend to bring together folks who want to take part in those celebrations. These events are open to everyone, but it's like another way in which we say, these communities are present on campus, we celebrate them, we see them, and we consider ways in which we can make sure that folks know they can interact with each other and collectively. So I wanted to have Ramón talk a little bit about the BULAC event, known as the BULAC Family Breakfast, but also a way in which BULAC supports students on campus. Ramón, do you want to say a few things? I should say BULAC welcome graduating students into their communities as they graduate.
Yes, so we have a family breakfast, which has happened for 2 years, and we were fortunate to have over 200 attendees both years. And it's just an opportunity for community building and a family gathering to share a meal. It's in that sense, it's a fairly simple event, but it's very popular, and it was immediately popular, and so that showed an interest, on the part of the alumni community. We also participated in the graduate stole ceremony, which we set aside a gift to graduating students to provide those and welcome them into the BULAC community upon graduation. So that involvement is super important, and as we said, the breakfast is welcome to everyone, but it's a great community building opportunity both within BULAC and for the larger community to celebrate Latinx students and alumni.
Thank you, Ramón. Eleanor, did you want to talk about the IPC gatherings?
Oh yes, it's wonderful. It's just absolutely wonderful. So we have an event where the students they get stoles. They get stoles in very bright African inspired colors. And the alumni are involved in the process of giving out the stoles, and it's almost viewed as a rite of passage from being part of the Brown student community to part of the Brown alumni community. It's absolutely wonderful, high energy event, African drumming, and it's really absolutely wonderful. The turnout at this event is continues to grow and grow and grow. The last one I was at was actually in the convention center. And it's something we all really very much look forward to. And as I say, kind of marks your transition into part of the alumni community. And as I say, I think it is augmenting and adding to the broader Brown alumni network because, persons are engaged. They have very good feelings about, these types of events, which I think makes it much more likely that they contribute even as they graduate to the broader community. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor. And so I'll say a couple things about the NABA commencement dinner. NAB is the student-facing group on campus, the natives at Brown community. This is another way, another example in how we celebrate graduates and welcome them into Affinity Group alumni communities. It's a wonderful event. A dinner brings together the graduating students and their families and other folks who want to attend. This is, again, all of our events are open to everyone. And so it's a wonderful space because we get to partner with NACI, the Native American and Indigenous Studies Initiative, and highlight faculty and staff who have made a difference in the lives of students on campus throughout their time there. We also have a wonderful alumni speaker at this event who kind of shares, more about their experience and transition leaving Brown and kind of what pursuits they explored after. And just overall, all of our Affinity Groups events are a place for community, a place for celebration, a place for getting to be with each other and have those celebrations, be a part of the general reunion time. So, like I said, we definitely want you to amplify our Affinity Group events to your classmates for reunion. Keep your eye on the reunion's website for more information. And as far as collaborations, it's always, an open opportunity for classes. If you, as you're planning your reunion events, want to think about, centering Affinity Groups as part of your programming. The wonderful Alumni Relations Events team handles all of the events. And so they could provide ideas, or you could reach out to Affinity Group leaders and say, we'd love for our class event to be open to everyone as well. And welcome, community members from all classes to specific events. But I know we're coming up on time, so I will go to the next slide. These are just some of the additional kind of activities that our Affinity Groups are involved in, so that you know more about, their alumni student engagement initiatives, ongoing regional events being a focus for all of our communities, and then some on-campus events that, for example, NABA is supporting. And I think slides will be shared, so if you want to look some more information up, these are just examples of some of the things that Affinity Groups do as part of their mission. If we go to the next slide. So we want to recap. Again, feedback from our last webinar was, what can ACL leaders do to support Affinity Groups? So these are 3 ways that we've highlighted throughout this presentation that you as class leaders can take actions you can take to support Affinity Groups, but also just celebrate the alumni in your classes that share these affinities. So we think that Affinity Groups are one of the many reasons that alumni are active on Brown Connect Plus and should activate on Brown Connect Plus. Certainly finding your class group is also a great reason. And so we want to continue to make alumni aware that this platform exists, is there for you, and to join and be active. I just mentioned amplifying the Affinity Group events to your classmates for reunion. Again, these events are open to everyone. So as folks, come across more information about them, it might lead to future connections and ideas, even for your own class programming when you attend, to be like, oh, maybe we want to do something like this for our class, in a later time. And finally, organizing your classmates to make a class gift to one of our Affinity Group scholarships, or like Eleanor said, you can individually give if you're contribute to the Brown Annual Fund or any other funds, and it's within your means to give a little extra or think about one of this being a priority within your giving. Please do consider the Affinity Group scholarships. So we'll move to the next slide. And just to recap, our wonderful Affinity Groups seek to engage, celebrate, and empower alumni and student communities. Together, we're working to enrich the Brown experience for the entire community. We had a really a great conversation earlier as part of this webinar, to discuss that. And so that's really what we seek through having not only affinity groups, but all the ways and all the communities that exist within our Brown ecosystem. So thank you. I'm gonna pass it to Krista. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Silvina. And I want to highlight a couple things that are coming up, but I also realize that there are a few things in the chat that I just want to underscore before we do that. I think Liza had a question about the different Brown scholarships and whether they were part of the Brown Promise. And I just wanted to address that because Silvina did send us a note that no, the scholarships are part of the Brown, they are part of the Brown Promise. They are added to students' financial aid packages to meet the Brown Promise of no loans and meeting the need of students. So in case anybody asked, now you have that answer. And I also just wanted to underscore the opportunities that we have as class leaders to be inspired by our affinity groups for our own programming for our entire class. There are some great opportunities to have speakers, topics that we could identify for our classes and to partner with our affinity groups and the folks that are in our class. So that's another way beyond reunion and in between reunions to maybe lean into our role. So I just wanted to say that and appreciate all the other comments and supports in the chat. So before we let you go, we want to let you know about another ACL training or ACL opportunities, since we're here to help you be successful as class leaders. We have our diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging and class recruitment office hour. This is open for any questions. It's next Wednesday at 7 p.m. EDT. It's led by members of our DEIB committee. You can get tips to expand class leadership recruitment and engagement, share and learn best practices from other class leaders, network with fellow class leaders, and draft a plan for an inclusive class leader recruitment initiative. So we've just put in the chat, thank you, Joan, how to register for that opportunity next week. And I know that the last office hour was super popular, so you should register now to make sure that you've got your spot. And with that, I think that we're at 7:59. We're going to give you 60 seconds back. But thank you so much for coming tonight. I want to thank Ramón, Eleanor, and Silvina for their wonderful conversation. I want to thank you all for raising so many great points. And I want to thank the ACL and our great training committee for working so diligently on this. Have a great night, and we'll look forward to seeing you the next time.